Om Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharma sarupine avatara varishtaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha. So, we all know the topic of discussion today. We have actually, I had told you that we will start an introduction to yoga philosophy, but when I started planning the talk, then I found that the way we are discussing is better, because otherwise there are so many topics in this philosophy, because it is the whole gamut of psychology, Hindu psychology is there, you see. So if we study this philosophy in the very beginning, etc., as a whole, there will be a lot of confusion. So the way we are proceeding, I think this is the best method, step by step, and each topic is categorized. So those who are here, they can see this image that we have already proceeded so far. And for online people, I will just share. So you can see this, we had started with some basic concepts about the human mind. Then we analyzed the four functions, Manas, Buddhi, Chitta and Ahankar. Then we saw that the mind has three levels, conscious, subconscious and superconscious. And then we saw that the mind has three constituents, which is the gunas, sattva, rajas and tamas. And last time we saw the five conditions of the human mind, the distracted and the, that which is trying to concentrate and which is concentrated. So all these we have seen. So today we will discuss the five cognitive states of the mind. This is also a part of the yoga philosophy. So we have to be a little attentive, because these things are, not generally common. So we have to give our full attention if this is new to us. So since the topic is about the cognitive states, first we should just have an idea of what cognition is. Cognition, of course, we all know in a general way, and cognitive processes they are a very important part of psychology, of course, and philosophy also. So they have been analyzed by Eastern and Western philosophers both. So what is cognition? In general, it is knowing something. So if you want to define it technically, cognition is states and processes involved in knowing something. So which in their completeness includes perception and also judgment. So cognition includes all conscious and unconscious processes by which knowledge is accumulated, such as perceiving, recognizing everything. We know something. So it is a state or experience of knowing. That this is the thing. And as we have seen, that questions about the nature of cognition and the relationship between the knowing mind and the external objects have been discussed by all important philosophies, and we have also discussed it. That when we were discussing Manas, Buddhi and Chitta, we saw that if I see something, but when I am thinking what it is, deliberating, that is the function of Manas. And when I decide, oh, this is a mouse, that is a function of Buddhi. And where all this takes place, all these processes take place in the mind stuff, that is called the Chitta. So all these we have done. So all this analysis comes under the field epistemology. Epistemology is a very important part of all philosophies, and cognition and its development have been studied from many viewpoints and subjected to many interpretations. So Vedanta also has its own interpretation. Epistemology is a very big subject, but if I discuss it in detail, it may be quite boring for some people. So we will leave it for a later date. But on the general, we will discuss it, a general view. So this is the definition of cognition. Now, what does yoga psychology say about that? This is also the view of Vedanta. We should remember that it is not that yoga and Vedanta are absolutely different. Because yoga is the practical application of Sankhya. And Sankhya and Vedanta are almost identical regarding a few minor differences. So we should know that what we are discussing today, it falls under yoga psychology, but it is not that Vedanta does not accept that. So what the Vedanta calls Brahman, we have seen that Yoga Sankhya calls it the Purusha. Purusha and Prakriti, those are the two realities according to Sankhya. So both the Vedanta and the Sankhya say that the self or the Purusha is in its own nature pure consciousness, free from limitations of the body and fluctuations of the mind. Nothing affects the self. But unfortunately, for some weird reason, the self confuses itself with the mind. Self thinks that what is happening in the mind is happening to itself. It is just like, suppose a crystal is there, and if a red color is there upon it, so crystal appears to be red, but the crystal has no color actually. Similarly, mind confuses itself with the self confuses itself with the mind, so it thinks that what is happening in the mind is actually happening within it. So the mind is the first product of Prakriti that we have discussed when we discussed the Sankhya, the evolution according to Sankhya. So mind is essentially unconscious, but it is so close to the self because it is the first product. Mind is so subtle. So it is so close that it appears to be conscious. Like the moon. Moon has no light of its own. It reflects the light of the sun. But we see the moon glowing. Similarly is the case here. So although the mind is not conscious, but it is so close to the self that it reflects through its manifesting power the self's consciousness so as to become apparently conscious. But actually it is not conscious. There is only one conscious entity in the world. That is the Atman or the self or Brahman, whatever you call it. So now, the mind is the internal power which cognizes, wills and retains by its blending together the knowledge relating to sound, touch, light, taste and smell which is brought by the sense organs. So the mind is the place where it acquires meaning. Everything is blended. Like when we taste something. When we taste something, what happens? Suppose we have eaten something before. Suppose we are eating ice cream. So the mind only shows us that something is there. If you are eating vanilla ice cream, something white is there. The sense organs tell only that. But what happens? We start eating. As soon as we start eating, there is another organ which comes into play. First, we just see it with our eyes. Then, when we start eating, another organ comes into play, our tongue. So, tongue tells us, oh, this is something which I have tasted before. Then, the buddhi determines that, oh, it is vanilla ice cream. So all these sense organs take impressions in a separately. Eyes see separately, tongue sees separately. So what is combining the sensation between the tongue and the eyes? It has to combine somewhere so that we know what it is. It is vanilla. Because only the eyes will not tell us. So all these things are combined in the mind. And the perception of pleasure and pain is also inherent in the internal organs. So to give another example, we see an elephant, suppose. So what do the eyes see? Eyes just see a black mass of flesh. Other properties of the elephant are not known by the eyes. We can just see maybe the tusks and the trunk and the black thing. Okay. But immediately when we see the elephant, we have the knowledge that, oh, it can carry loads. It is a very powerful beast. What it eats and all the noise it makes, the trumpets and all. Okay. So all these things had been gathered before from our sense organs. We had heard the trumpet of the elephant. We had seen how it can carry loads. So the inner faculty which combines all these fragments of knowledge after the elephant is seen with the eyes and produces the concept that it is an elephant is the mind. So this is how the mind cognizes with the help of the sense organs. And suppose we see something which we like very much. Suppose we see an ice cream which we like very much. So that is also a function of the chitta or the mind stuff. And it is just a reappearance of the feeling of pleasure which we have experienced before. If we have not experienced ice cream before, we don't know. We won't have any sense of pleasure. But after eating once, then when we see, then we start licking our lips. So all these things, memory, etc., all this happens because all these are stored in the mind. So the cognition, what is cognition? According to Vedanta and Sankhya and all that, only there is one knower, that is the self, because only that is conscious. An unconscious thing cannot know anything. This mouse cannot know this table because both are unconscious. Okay. So the self is the only knower and it knows the objects of the world. It has to have some medium of knowing because self is unrelated. So how will it know something? It knows through the modifications of the mind. Modifications of the mind which correspond to the forms of the object which is known. So when I see this mouse, my mind has a modification which corresponds to this mouse. Okay, that is called a vritti. We have seen that. Through that modification, the self knows everything. So if the mind has no modification, the self cannot know. And these states of the mind which know are called the cognitive states of the mind. Okay, I think this much is clear. So although the self really undergoes no change or modification, yet because of its reflection in the changing states and processes of the chitta, the self appears to be subject to changes and to pass through different states of the mind or chitta in the same way in which the moon appears to be moving when we see it in the reflected waves. We see a river or anything which has waves. So the moon's reflection is there. So the moon appears to be moving. But the moon is not moving. It is the water of the lake which is moving. So modifications of the mind when it comes in contact with objects gives us the knowledge about those objects. Again, I will repeat. When I see an object, the mind undergoes a modification. There's a change in the mind. That change, that wave of the mind is called the mental vritti, chitta vritti. And this vritti or modification gives us the knowledge about this object. If I see anything and there is no change in the mind, if the mind is in either sleeping or in samadhi or something like that, then of course we cannot know anything. So to know something, the mind must undergo that particular modification which corresponds to that object. I think that is clear. Okay. So the chitta is the mind stuff where everything is going on. It is just like a transparent lake. And the waves which rise in it, Chacha, this what? Radhadi, please come here, leave that. So we can do that later. So the mind is like a transparent lake, and the waves which rise in it by the impact of sense impressions constitute manas. So mind consists of a succession of thought waves called the chitta vritti. We have discussed that. And in yoga philosophy, the word vritti has been used technically to imply cognition or conscious mental states. So chitta vrittis imply the various knowing states of the mind. This we have to remember. Vritti means knowing something. So the modifications of the chitta, that is the cognitive mental states, are many. They are almost, you can say, infinite, you can say. But these may be classified under 5 major heads. They fall into more or less those 5 categories. So today we will try to discuss as many of them as possible. We may not be able to complete all 5. So now I will just show you some images which will make it clear. So here we will take the help of the Yoga Sutras, that is the Aphorisms of Patanjali. So I will just share the original sutra, original aphorism, where all these are mentioned. Let me share so that image so that it will be easier to understand. So here you can see, and for those who are sitting here, I'll just share. So this is the original yoga aphorism in which all these 5 states are mentioned. So those who can read Devanagari, they can, yeah. So vrittaya panchitaya, there's a means that pancha means 5. So vrittis, these knowing states of the mind, are 5. Klishta and aklishta. Klishta means those which some which are giving pain, and some which are not giving us pain. So what are these? We will see in the next aphorism. I will just share that again. So this aphorism just states that there are 5 classes of modifications. And what these are, we will see in the next one. So here you can see what are these. These are the 5. Pramana, Viparyaya, Vikalpa, Nidra and Smriti. So the plural of smriti is smritaya. So these five. Pramana, that is right knowledge. Viparyaya means wrong knowledge or indiscrimination. Vikalpa means verbal delusion. Nidra, of course, we know very well, it is sleep. Yeah. And Smriti also we know very well. Smriti is memory. All the time we are remembering something, all these things are there. So these are the five cognitive states, and we will just discuss them one by one. So first is Pramana. Pramana we have already discussed in some detail when we were discussing the Nyaya philosophy. So first of all, I am showing the English translations of all these five. Let those who share this. So here you can see the English also. Pramana, that is right knowledge or correct cognition. Right knowledge. So suppose I see this mouse. I know this mouse as a mouse. That is right knowledge. And viparyaya is indiscrimination or incorrect knowledge. When I see something but I don't recognize it correctly. Suppose that is a famous Vedanta example, you know, seeing the rope as a snake. At night, there is a rope lying. We think it is a snake, we become afraid. That is wrong knowledge. So that is second one, viparyaya. The third you can see is vikalpa or verbal delusion. This is a little difficult, we will discuss it. So this is the cognition of something which does not exist at all. It is just a play of words. We will discuss it through examples. Like in wrong knowledge, what is the difference between wrong knowledge and vikalpa? In wrong knowledge, I see something at least. If I see a rope as a snake, at least I am seeing something. But in vikalpa, that object does not exist at all. It is just a play of words. We will discuss that. So the fourth is nidra. Nidra is also a cognitive state, mind you. In sleep also we know something. That is an interesting fact. It is not all darkness and blank, nothing. No. It is very easy to prove that. You will see. And the fourth is smriti or memory. Memory we all know. We recall something, what we had seen yesterday, what we had eaten yesterday, where we had gone yesterday, all that. So these are the five cognitive states. These are the broad categories. So we will just discuss them one by one. Stop the sharing. So first is Pramana. We have already seen the word which denotes uncontradicted knowledge about a real object. Like I am seeing this mouse as a mouse. This knowledge will never be contradicted because it is true. The mouse will always be a mouse and I see it as a mouse. Okay. So this correct knowledge of any object is called Prama. Just Prama. Okay. And the instrument of this Prama, the way of getting this correct knowledge is called Pramana. So how do I get this correct knowledge? Direct perception. This knowledge is direct perception. So this is called Pratyaksha Pramana. Pratyaksha, we know that. It's direct. And there is also inference. We have discussed inference. Inferences means when we cannot directly see the object, but we gauge it by the signs. For example, now this horrible war is going on. So when we see some images that some bomb has fallen, so we just see the smoke. But we know that if there is smoke, there has to be a fire. So we infer fire by seeing smoke. That is another way of knowing, but it is not direct. That is called inference or anumana. And the third also we will discuss. According to Sankhya, there are three ways of knowing. So Pramana is making sure of a real thing which was unknown before. In other words, Pramana is the process of Prama or the right knowledge in regard to anything. So when we gain right knowledge, the way in which we gain that is called Pramana. So in Indian philosophical systems, they don't agree on how many types of pramanas are there. So we are discussing yoga, which is a part of Sankhya. So we will discuss pramana in a very short way according to yoga only. But here it differs from Vedanta. Sankhya accepts only 3 methods of pramana, while Advaita Vedanta accepts 6 methods. So we will discuss 6 methods when we come to Vedanta, but now we will discuss only the 3 methods, and that too in very brief, about what Sankhya accepts as Praman. So I'll just share an image again so that it will become clear. Here you can see the types of pramanas according to Sankhya. So what is Prama? The characteristics is given here. Prama means true knowledge. It is definite and certain, and a faithful and unerring presentation of the object. It is absolutely definite. When I see this mouse, I have no doubts that this is a mouse. And it is a faithful representation. I can see the mouse. I know where is the ball, where is the, all this battery and all that. So this is called Prama. And the way in which we get this is Pramana. So according to Sankhya, we can get this correct knowledge in 3 ways only. First is Pratyaksha. I directly see this. I directly see that you are sitting. There is no doubt about that. Second, we have discussed just now, Anumana inference. So from above, I can hear that Harbansji is talking below. So I know his voice. So I don't see him. But when I hear his voice, it goes into my ear. As soon as it goes into my mind, it relates to Harbansji's voice, which I had heard previously. So it tells me, oh, Harbansji's voice I can hear. This means Harbansji must be there, present. So I know he is there, but I don't see him. I infer it. That is called Anumana. In Hindi and Bengali also the same word is there. In Sanskrit also it is there. So this is the second one. The third one I will discuss it in a little detail in the light of what Swami Vivekananda has said. The third one you can see is testimony. Testimony means when someone tells me. But that someone in spiritual matters has to be a very special person. Even in ordinary matters, if I am walking on the street and some unknown person I have never seen before, he tells me something, then I will think whether to believe it or not. I don't even know him. Like all these, what happens in all these scams. In India, some scam or other is going on. So someone will come, oh, we will double your money in 2 years, sir. Give us your money, absolutely no problem. So you give it and you don't see the money again. Huh? So that happens when you believe someone who doesn't have the credentials. You don't know him. Out of greed, you think that, oh, he must be a genuine person. So similarly, in spiritual matters also, they say that we don't take any and everybody's words as pramana. No, not at all. Otherwise, we'll suffer from the same fate. That person has to be a trustworthy person. So that in Sanskrit is called apta. Apta. This may be a new word to you. And what he says is apta vakya. Vakya we all know. So apta vakya means what? The testimony of a trustworthy person. So in ordinary matters we know, but in spiritual matters this is very special. Because about ordinary things many people can tell us. Where is the nearest Starbucks coffee? Where is the nearest Safeway? Many people can tell us. But we don't get spiritual knowledge so easily. Because spiritual knowledge is gained by very few. So how will anybody and everybody tell us? So this is a very important way of getting spiritual knowledge. So we can just discuss it a little. What is Apta Vakya? I will discuss it in the light of what Swami Vivekananda says. So on this sutra which I had shown you, Swami Vivekananda has written a small commentary. You know that in Raj Yoga it is there about this Anumana, Pratyaksha and all this. So what does Swamiji say? Swamiji defines Pramana in a very simple way. He calls it proof. What is the proof that this mouse exists and it is a mouse? The proof is I see it. So it is a Pramana, direct Pramana. So Swami Vivekananda says when two of our perceptions do not contradict each other, we call it proof. It is as simple as that. I hear something, and if it contradicts something already perceived, I begin to rethink. I don't believe. See, when we get two kinds of information, but those are contradicting in nature, then we have to think about it, that which is true. So, these proofs or pramana, Swami Vivekananda says, are three kinds, which we have seen. So, first is direct perception or pratyaksha. Whatever we see and feel is proof. If there is nothing present to delude our senses. Of course, suppose I see something, but if I am colorblind, then that is not pramana, because my eyes are defective. But if all my organs, etc., are working, then this will be a pramana. When I see something, I will know it. So that is called pratyaksha or direct perception. Then second is anumana. We have already discussed that. We see a sign, and from the sign we know that the thing exists. We see a sign, smoke is coming, we know that there must be fire. So the third one, which we have discussed in detail, is called Apta Vakya. Apta Vakya means direct evidence of the yogis. Not anybody and everybody can give us spiritual knowledge. Yogis are those who have seen the truth. So we have our own Yogi ji here. We need not go anywhere else. It's so close to us. So these spiritual persons, they are the authors of our scriptures. Like Gita. Who wrote the Gita? Not Mr. Tom. Shri Krishna himself wrote the Gita. So we know that Krishna knew what he was talking about. So we can believe the Gita. So because these spiritual persons are the authors of the scriptures, these scriptures are also proofs. They are the valid pramana, the third type of pramana. What is the proof of their words, if you ask? The proof is their direct perception. They see spiritual realities directly. So when Swami Vivekananda went to Sri Ramakrishna, sir, have you seen God? Sri Ramakrishna did not say that, no, this person had seen and he had told me. No. He said, yes, I see him as clearly as I see you. So, what is the proof of their words? They see spiritual realities as clearly as we see these worldly objects. That is the biggest proof. After that, there is no proof required. So, according to our scriptures, there is knowledge beyond the senses also. What we can gain from the senses, hearing, seeing, smelling, that is not all. Beyond this, there is a knowledge that is called spiritual knowledge. And when that knowledge does not contradict reason and our past human experience, that knowledge is proof. That knowledge is proof. So, Swami Vivekananda gives the example that if any madman comes into this room and says he sees angels around him, that would not be proof. Because it is contradicted by what we see. We don't see any angels. So, for something to be a valid pramana, first, Swami Vivekananda says it must be true knowledge. Secondly, it must not contradict past knowledge. And thirdly, it must depend upon the character of the man who gives it out. So we have first to see if the man who gives us spiritual knowledge is perfectly unselfish or not, whether he is really a holy person or not. If a person claims to be spiritual and we find that, he's doing so many scams and all that and hiding something in his closet, we know that, better to remain away from this Babaji. It is not to be trusted. So, he must be really holy person, and secondly, he must have reached beyond the senses. He must have seen the spiritual reality himself. And thirdly, that what he says does not contradict the past knowledge of humanity. That is the thing. So that truth which he says must have a possibility of being verified. If a man says, I have seen a vision and tells me that I have no right to see it, I don't believe him. So if Ramakrishna had told Vivekananda that, yes, I see God, but you cannot see him, then Swami Vivekananda would have told bye-bye. But he said, no, I have seen it. And you can also see, provided you do what I have done. You cannot see him sitting in the armchair and watching Netflix. No, that you cannot do. So, this is the things, and when these conditions are satisfied, then we know that we have found a truly apta person. Apta means a real saintly person, and we can believe that person. So Swami Vivekananda also had tested Ramakrishna in so many ways before he was, because after all he was Swamiji. So he did not believe at first. First he thought that, he's a monomaniac, all these things he had thought. Then even in the deathbed of Sri Ram, when Sri Ramakrishna was suffering from cancer, then also one thought came to Swami Vivekananda, which you have seen. So anyway, that is a different topic. But so Swamiji says that when we believe in some spiritual man or spiritual scripture, we should see that these conditions are satisfied. For example, we believe in the Gita. So if we see that there is one new Gita written by some Babaji, and it contradicts everything which is given in the Upanishads and Gita, then we should not trust that, because it is contradicting those past experience. So when all these things, all these conditions are satisfied, then that Vakya, that teaching of that particular person will be considered as Pramana, right knowledge. So that is the thing. So these three are the Pramanas according to Sankhya. Prama means right knowledge, then the way in which we get that knowledge is called Pramana. That is the simple thing. So three types of Pramana we have discussed in a very brief way. Volumes have been written upon one discussion on one Pramana, mind you. Perception, for example, perception. If you study Nyaya in detail, Nyaya will define perception in one way. Then Sankhya will object. Oh, how can you say that this is perception? Then Nyaya will give another definition. It is mind-boggling. So we will just see it in a little brief way, as we have seen now. So next class of vrittis, the first we have discussed. The first, cognitive condition of the mind, Pramana. Correct knowledge, which gives us correct knowledge. The second is viparyaya, or indiscrimination or incorrect knowledge. So I will again share the image so that it is. So first I will show the sutra where these pramanas are mentioned by name. This is the sutra. So this is the sutra which gives the three types of pramanas which we have discussed. Pratyaksha, Anumana and Agama. Agama is Aptavakya, what we have discussed. It is called Agama also. So in Sanskrit, Pratyaksha, A plus A becomes A. That is why it is written Pratyakshanumana Agama Pramanani. Direct perception, inference and competent evidence are proofs. So we have discussed this. We can go to the next image. Viparyaya. This is Viparyaya. You can see this. So Viparyaya, what is Viparyaya? Viparyaya, Mithya Jnana. All those who know Indian languages know this. Mithya means false. Jnana means knowledge. So first one, Prama is correct knowledge. While Viparyaya is Mithya Jnana means false knowledge. Then afterwards it is written Mithya Jnanam Atad Rupa Pratishtham. Tad Rupa means in its real nature. Tad Rupa, as it is. Atad Rupa means that which is not its real nature. So it is established, it is not established in its real nature. That is called Atadrupa Pratishtham. Anyway, for us general study, it is enough to know that Viparyaya means Mithya Jnana or false knowledge. So we will just discuss it very briefly. Yeah. So this class of vrittis, this Viparyaya class of vrittis, modifications of the mind, which arises in our mind sometimes, is mistaking one thing for another. Simple. Something is there, but we think that it is something else. So the stock example we know, seeing the rope as the snake. And another stock example of Vedanta is this mother of pearl we take as a piece of silver. Mother of pearl, that kind of mollusk which is shining in the sand. So we go and see, oh, I've struck silver. Then we find, oh my God, it is just some seashell or something. So viparya means wrong knowledge of objects as what they are not. Simple. And it includes doubt or an uncertain cognition also. When I am not certain about something, then I cannot call it knowledge at all. It is just wrong knowledge. Only when I definitely know that, oh, this is this, then I can call it right knowledge. So, knowing a thing as different from what it really is, false knowledge. So, there are many kinds of false knowledge. This is also a huge discussion in Indian philosophy. Kinds of false knowledge and why something is false knowledge, why something is not. There is a huge discussion. So, viparya is one term which includes all kinds of incorrect knowledge. That is enough for us. So, why is viparya not a pramana? Pramana we've seen, correct knowledge. So, why is viparya not a pramana? Because it is demolished when we know the thing correctly. So, when we see a rope, we think it is a snake, first of all. That is wrong knowledge. That is viparya. But we go, try to see it carefully, pick it up. So our past knowledge that it is a snake is cancelled by correct knowledge. So since that knowledge is cancelled, it cannot be called pramana. If it was pramana or correct knowledge, how would it be cancelled? So my knowledge that this is a mouse can never be cancelled because it is actually a mouse. So because our wrong knowledge is cancelled subsequently by right knowledge, that is why it cannot be called a pramana. So in other words, the object of pramana is real, while the object of illusory cognition or wrong cognition is not real. When I see a rope as a snake, the snake is not real. There is no snake there. So false cognition is sublated. Sublated means it is contradicted by correct knowledge. That is, the illusion of seeing the moon double is contradicted by valid knowledge of one moon. So when someone has defect in his eyes, he may see the moon as double. But that is contradicted when he sees the moon as it really is. So just for the interest of those who are interested in a little Sanskrit, I will just quote some definition of this viparya from the Sanskrit commentary. What is viparya? Atatha bhute arthe tatha utpadyamanam jnanam viparyaya. So, what the meaning is not, if we know it as to be something as what it is not, then that is called viparyaya. Yatha, as shuktikayam rajata jnanam. Rajata means silver, and shuktika means this mother of pearl. So when we see mother of silver in a mother of pearl, that is wrong knowledge. That is the thing. So it is called atadrupa pratishtha. It is not established in what it really is. So another example is given, like when we have doubt. So in Vedanta there is another stock example. Sthanurva purushova iti. Sthanu means a stump of a tree. So in the night we are going, a tree has been cut down recently, and just the stump remains. So we don't know if it's a thin stump. Then at night if we go, oh, is someone standing there? Is there someone, a person? When we go, no, it is just a stump of a tree. So sthanu is a stump of a tree. So when we are doubting, sthanuva purushova, is it a sthanu or is it a purusha? Then that is also viparya, because we don't know what it is. So these two are belong to the 5 cognitive states of the mind. After this comes Vikalpa. Vikalpa or verbal delusion. That is cognition of a thing which doesn't exist at all. So we will leave it for later. It is a little complicated, sort of, that concept is a little complicated. So today I think we can end here. So just to sum up, that whenever we know something, there our mind undergoes a modification. If there is no wave in the mind, we cannot know anything. The self knows the external world through these modifications of the mind. And these modifications of the mind give us knowledge. Broadly speaking, these cognitive states of the mind, the states of the mind which give us knowledge, are of 5 types. That is Pramana, Viparyaya, Vikalpa, Nidra and Smriti. Correct knowledge, incorrect knowledge, verbal delusion, sleep and remembrance. So we have discussed 2 today, and the 3 we can discuss when we discuss this topic again. So let us stop here, and then we can, if somebody wants to say something. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Ram Krishna.